And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Real Talks. I'm your host, David Steele. I hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Um, so, this is the second stream in as many days, and we've got another one coming up tomorrow, and I'll talk about that at the end of the show. And so, what I'm doing over the course of the next couple of weeks before we get into February is I'm talking about films in, that I really, really enjoyed in 2023. Um, Truth be told, you guys are going to be getting more retrospectives, I promise, just not this week. And I have something lined up for that. And once again, I'll talk about that at the end of the show. So, this is the second retrospective or the second film in 2023 that as many days that I really enjoyed. This was on my top 10 list. It was a little film. It was the first by a production company by, two guys that have really made their mark in the industry. And I'm talking about Air. Air is one of those movies that it's a little movie that could, right? So this is about, let me backtrack a little bit. So the production company is Artist Equity. And so this was started by the two guys you see there on the screen, okay? Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. And they've been in the business for, well, going back to 97, so about 25 years, give or take. And so they have made their marks and everything else. And so this is their first production as far as, being a studio. And so there was a couple of significant things about this that I think that I'll talk about that I think is necessary to talk about because it kind of changed the industry just a little bit. And so first of all, I love this movie. This, as I said, this was on my top 10 list of 2023. Um, it was just fantastic. So the whole cast, this is for a little movie, this was a stacked cast. It really was. Okay. So um, let's talk about the cast real quick. Okay. So and I'll talk about release and everything else in a couple minutes. Excuse me. So on the left, you have Chris Medina on the far left. Okay. Really, really funny. Really everybody had, so there were 3 or 4 parts that were big, if you're going to call this big. Okay. The film was about 112 minutes from the first frame to the last frame. So it wasn't a long film. It was a little under 2 hours, but it didn't feel like that at all. So you had Chris Medina all the way over on the left. You had Damon Wayans, okay, who was in one scene that was really good with Matt Damon, okay. You have one of the, I believe that's Ben Affleck. Yes, that is Ben Affleck right there. He is the director of this, and it was a really well done film in all respects. Okay. Next to him, you have, of course, the incomparable Viola Davis, who loved her in this. She plays Dolores Jordan. We're going to get into who plays who in a couple of minutes, too. Of course, you have Matt Damon. You have the actor that played James Jordan. You have Jason Bateman, of course. And then you have Chris Tucker. So it was a big cast, relatively speaking. Now, the 3 people that really had their marks, their fingerprints on this film, okay, were Ben Affleck, Viola Davis, and Matt Damon. And they did a fantastic job with this. And so the story goes, and I'm going to get into production here in a couple minutes too. So the production of this movie, okay, basically was written by Alex Convery. Now, you're saying, well, who the heck is Alex Convery? Alex Convery is a writer, just like everybody else here in Los Angeles, okay, that wanted to make it in the industry. And Convery is a huge basketball fan. He's a huge Chicago Bulls fan, but he's a huge basketball fan. And so don't forget, we had the pandemic. So everything was shut down for about a year. Okay. So we took to writing. And in 2020 and in 2021, he wrote this documentary, this 10 episode documentary that, by the way, guys, you can find this on Netflix and a couple other places. It's absolutely, I mean, I was a sports fan growing up. It's absolutely fantastic. Okay. Watch the unedited version, though. Okay. And it's The Last Dance. This details, so anybody who was around during the 90s, okay, this details the run the Chicago Bulls had that in the 1990s. Not the first three when they won in 91, 92, and 93. Coming back, though, this is the last time. So the story goes that you had Jerry Krause and Jerry Reinsdorf. They were the owner of the GM. And they did not want, because Jordan's contract was coming up. And at that point, arguably he's won 5 championships at that point, 7 years. And they didn't want to pay him. And Pippen was one of the lower, he was his right hand man, but they didn't want to pay him the money. So this is Phil Jackson. You have to remember, Phil Jackson, the Zen master, okay, essentially, that what the owner and the GM had told him were, look, this is it. We are not bringing you back after this season. And there was a lot of friction between ownership and Jordan. And he threatened to walk away. And so they said, okay, look, what we'll do, okay, is we're going to just play this out. We're going to win it, and it's done. And of course, that's the final shot where, arguably that's Michael Jordan's last shot as a Chicago Bull. And we've all seen it where he, crosses over Russell. And then, he still thinks it's an offensive foul to this day, but he crosses him over, and then he hits the shot. And funny enough, the Bulls were actually down in that with about 20 seconds left. They get a steal, they come down, they don't call timeout, and they obviously put the ball in Jordan's hands. He crosses them over, bang! That's your championship winning shot. And how they got the name of The Last Dance was. It was actually Phil Jackson. He said, look, guys, they're not going to bring me back. So this is going to be The Last Dance. And that's what the name of the documentary was, The Last Dance. So Alex Convery. So that's where he comes from. That was the only thing he's ever written. Okay. So, and it was done really good. So Convery had, he actually got the idea for watching that from was from when Nike signed basketball. Obviously, Michael Jordan created the Air Jordan line. He then researched it further, and in 2022, so this is last year, we're almost a year, well, 2 years now, the script was finally brought to Amazon. Now, Amazon started to be a big player at this point in films and everything else. And they were produced with Skydance Sports and Mandalay Pictures, leaning on Affleck and Damon to play the title roles, with Affleck directing. So they had name recognition behind it. They had a good studio behind it. They had a good, not only production company, but distributor. Okay. And so principal photography ended up beginning on June 6th of 2022. with once again going back to the cast here with several of the participants here with Jason Bateman, Viola Davis, Chris Tucker, Marlon Wayans, and Chris Messina attached. Robert Richardson serves as the cinematographer, and the AM Alexa 35 is what it was shot with. It wrapped up in July of 2022. So this was a really quick shoot. Okay. This isn't something that took a long time to shoot. Um, and they got it done in about 6 weeks. Once again, it's only about 112 minutes. So, you know, um, the same month, okay, you had a couple of other cast members come on, and the cast of the character of Michael Jordan, okay, is portrayed in the film, though he's never seen, which I think was a brilliant job by Affleck. And he actually sat down with Jordan, okay, and he talked to Michael Jordan, and he's like, "Look, I want to make this film. I have a really good script, but I'm not going to do it without your blessing." Okay, and Jordan's like, "Yeah, okay, let's do it," because look, he is okay. The way I look at sports is this, okay. I look at sports as, people say, "Oh, this person's the greatest of all time," or "That person's the greatest of all time." We have a tendency in the last 25 years, okay, to monetize everything or put a number to it. So, for example, in sports, it's championships. The person with the most championships is the greatest of all time. Now, you could say, well, what about Wayne Gretzky or Tom Brady or Michael Jordan? Right. But you have to look back at when they played, how they played, who they played with. Okay. The thing is that for me, it's greatest of a generation. Okay. It's greatest of a generation. Who was the greatest of that generation? Was it Bill Russell? Was it Will Chamberlain? Was it Bob Cousy? Was it Havlicek? Who was it? As we got better and better, and basketball developed more and more and more, when the 3-point shot came in, when the 24 second shot clock came in, when all of these additions were made, um, it got more refined. As a result, okay, and then on top of that, because look, basketball is one of those sports that there really is no technology, right? It's not like a golf club where you can make it as light as possible, or a golf ball where you can, make it the things aerodynamic so the ball goes further, or anything else. It's all about athletic talent. That all being said, I think that what you get, okay, this is pure athletic talent. So when you get guys like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron, you'll never see another LeBron James again, ever. The man is built. I mean, and that was another whole thing too, right? The simple premise was that LeBron James was so good that he came right out of high school. I mean, he was 18 years old. And he was 18 years old, and he jumped right from high school to the NBA. Now, in that time frame, okay, around 97, 98, you had some players do this. Okay? Once again, LeBron James did it. You had Kobe Bryant do it. Okay? Don't forget, he had a really good gene pool in Joey Bean Bryant, okay, that played in the league all those years ago. You had Jermaine O'Neal, who's, Indiana Pacers. You had, of course, the big ticket, Kevin Garnett. These guys all came out of high school. And what ended up happening was that they rarely went to college. And look, you have a lot of players too that try to do it and then bust. So it's very difficult to do. That all be I digress because of this. Once that happened, then what they said is, okay, well, now you have what's called the one and done rule. The one and done rule is essentially you have to go to college for 1 year and then you can declare. Now, once again, this is back in 1984. That's when you know, this takes place. Is 1984, and Nike was still trying to find its bearings and everything else. As a matter of fact, they were third in the shoe industry. Okay, Adidas had 40% of the market. Converse, which had a couple big stars in Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and Julius Erving. Okay, and then you had Nike. Nike was the third rated company of all of the shoes. And what ended up happening was they had, you know, they were trying to sign three or four decent prospects to bolster their shoe line. Don't forget, too, 1984 was the year of the Olympics in Los Angeles. Mary Lou Retton. It does a really good job, and I'm going to get back to the writing here in a minute. It does a really good job of actually creating the feel of 1984. So, principal photography was done in July, as I said. Okay, although not directly involved with the film. Jordan, as I said, met with Affleck prior to the production, and he gave his blessing, asking for 4 changes to the script. A. Jordan asked for the inclusion of George Rowling, the assistant coach of the 1984 men's Olympic team, who was first to recommend it to side with Nike. That's important. That's important. Okay, because when we make films, and this is not a biopic, guys. Okay, I want to be absolutely clear about this. This isn't a biopic, as Aaron Sorkin would like to say, a cradle to grave biopic. It's definitely not that. Okay, it's a film about, and it's not even about his quote greatest hits. Okay, it's about the business side of it. How did he actually end up signing with a third rate at that time, a third rate type of company? And so what ended up happening? So George Rowling was a big factor. Rowling was played by um, Matt Damon, or not Matt Damon. I stand corrected, Damon Wayans, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but yeah, Damon Wayans, or Marlon Wayans. I said Damon Wayans. I stand corrected. But Marlon's way. It was that one scene. They're having a beer and they're talking, and Matt Damon's Sonny character basically is like, "Look, I have a feeling," and Marlon Wayans was really good about it. And he's like, "Look," and he tells him the story. Okay, about he was a young guy in 1963, and yeah, he really encouraged him. So that was the first major change. The second major change, okay, was he asked that Howard White, who was played by Chris Tucker, who was fantastic in this movie, who was the vice president of Nike Jordan brand and his personal friend, be included in the film. Very simple, okay. All Jordan has to do is give him a ring, say, "Hey, look, they're making this movie. Want you to be in it," okay. Um, the third thing, this directly led to Affleck casting Tucker, whom he long wanted to work with before he knew Jordan. He also asked for the removal of Tinker Hatfield as a character, as Hatfield, despite working at Nike at the time, was not involved, okay, with the creation of the Air Jordan. Okay, so this is Michael actually wanting authenticity. I mean, we always talk about authenticity in films. This is authenticity. This is what it's really about. When you're getting the guy in Jordan to make a couple of small changes, you know, it's helpful. And the last thing, asked the role of his parents, James R. Jr. Jordan Sr. and Dolores, his mother, to be extended as the casting of Davis to play his mother, who was instrumental in making his mind up and having a meeting with Nike and his idea. And did Affleck and Damon did an uncredited script revision to accompany this. And Viola Davis is fantastic in this movie. Absolutely fantastic in this movie. And as I said before, there were three really main players, if you will. Okay. Ben Affleck, Viola Davis, and Matt Damon. Davis was incredible. And I was thinking about it today. I kind of was laughing to myself because I said, what if, just for a minute, what if the Academy, they'll never do this, but what if the Academy actually wanted to put her in as a 5 and Best Supporting Actress for the Oscars? Because last year she came out with The Woman King that just killed it, and she didn't get nominated. And instead, you have an Andrea Riseborough getting in for to Leslie, and it's like, huh? What? How did this happen? The Academy likes to do a lot of makeup type of things. They'll give an Oscar to somebody who's been nominated several times but loses. Just, it's one of those things. And she was fabulous. I'm not saying that they would do that, but she was absolutely top notch fabulous. She has a scene with Matt Damon later on in the film that is just, it's spot on. It's spot on. So that's the production. Okay. So we've talked about the writer. We've talked about what he did. But you got to remember, guys, that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, they've been around the block, right? They've been around the block. People forget. 1997, there was a little movie called Good Will Hunting. And this was nominated for 8 Oscars. Okay. So the big one for them, and you got to remember, they were like 27, 28 at the time. They ended up winning for Best Original Screenplay. Completely changed their lives, right? They're solidified in the business now. They're Academy Award winning actors. Okay. At which point, okay, it's one of those things where it was incredible. Okay. And they took the longest time. I mean, and both of them acted and did their own thing, but people forgot they wrote Good Will Hunting. Okay. Affleck wanted to try and direct later on in his career, which he did. A couple of films that, I never saw Geely. It was a mess. But, he actually did end up winning again. Okay. And it was for a little film called Argo. And Argo ended up winning the biggest prize at the Academy Awards, Best Picture. Now, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong about this, and I'd have to have somebody fact check me. So in the comments, please leave me a comment if I'm wrong about this. I believe Argo is one of the only few pictures out there to ever win Best Picture, but not be nominated for Best Director. And that is mind blowing. Okay. The only other picture I can think of off the top of my head that's in recent years is in the last 10 years was Spotlight. I don't know, and I'll have to check on this right now. Let me, as I talk to you guys about, because this is extremely rare, right? And we could have this same scenario happen this year too, where we have a film that is nominated for Best Picture, but misses. Okay, so it was nominated. Let's see here. It was nominated, won 2 Oscars. Okay, it won 2 Oscars. I think. Um. Okay, let's see. Um, okay, so he did get nominated. Okay, I stand corrected on that. But Air is, it, Argo is one of the only pictures that I can think of off the top of my head that missed out on Best Director, but won Best Picture. And we could actually see this happen again, right? This year, where Bradley Cooper, okay, he's going to get nominated for Best Actor. We all know that. It's going to get nominated for Best Picture. We all know that. But he might miss out on Best Director. So just something to, keep in mind. So after all the success they had, okay, um, it's one of those things where now, we have a a film and a filmmaker that is really solidified and everything else. So let us I'm going to start putting a couple more of these on here for you guys because now what we're going to do, okay, is we are going to talk about um, the film itself. So, but yeah, so the other thing I wanted to bring up, and this is important, is the way it was shared, the revenue was shared. Okay. Usually a writer gets a fee and that's it. That's it. And what ends up happening is they do a job and um sorry guys. Um so they end up doing a job and that's that's the end of it. And what Damon and Affleck did was they gave uh Connery, okay, um they gave him full ownership of the or full share of the uh, a full share of the screenwriting, and which meant more revenue for him and everything else. Um, so that is important to notice and note because that kind of changed things. Not only was he established, okay, but he made more money, and that was kind of important. So, um, okay, so let's talk about the music for a minute, right? The music for this movie was fantastic. Okay, it was a lot of what they did. Okay, the other thing that they did really really well in this movie, and Steve Jobs kind of did this as well. The movie Danny Boyle directed. They used a lot of images of 1984, whether it was the Los Angeles Olympics. In the first 10 minutes of this film, it's like you're transported all the way back to 1984. Um, whether it's the Wheaties box, whether it's you know the video games they were playing, the handheld video games. I don't know if anybody remember those. I had one. Um, you had the television shows. They even used the theme from Beverly Hills Cop. They did a lot of pop culture references. They even had an Apple II. I remember that growing up, having one of those computers. Speaking of Steve Jobs, but yeah, it was just they transported you all the way back, and it was just fantastic on every level that was done. Um, okay, so that was important. I thought. Let's see. Um, okay. So we'll remove that one. So okay, let's. I'm just gonna start putting these in, and um, this. So basically, I'm not gonna bore you with the details, but the whole story is very quick. Okay, it it was about Michael Jordan, right? It was the whole the synopsis of the movie is Matt Damon plays Sonny Vaccaro, and Ben Affleck plays Phil Knight. This is when Nike was, you can see the computer in the background and everything else. This is one of those films where it, so they transport you back to 1984. Nike is really struggling at this time. All of the big stars are taken out. They have the draft coming up, and they're trying to figure out exactly who they're going to be able to get. Right? They weren't going to be able to sign King. They weren't going to be able to get Barkley. Okay, John Stockton was off the board. Okay, or he didn't want it. Nobody wanted to go there. So Vaccaro came up with the idea. Okay, of we will put all the eggs, and he was a gambling guy. Okay, and he put all of his trust. Okay, in going with one person, and that one person was Michael Jordan. And when the film opens, we see that he's at a high school basketball game, and he's doing his thing. And so I mean, he's trying to recruit players and everything else. Um, but yeah, it was one of those things where am I going with this? Oh, it was just one of those things where the authenticity was there all the way around. Okay, and basically the whole film. Okay, and you could kind of feel it. Okay, each act. Okay, was one of the companies, right? And we're going back and forth with, Peter Falk, Jordan's agent, and that's Vicario and Falk, and he's, basically misleading him. And so he's like, look, eventually he breaks, and he's like, look, they're coming to Beaverton, Oregon, because that's where they were in 1984 was Oregon. And so he's like, can you get me in the room? And once they got him in the room, it was completely different. Um, so, but getting back to, I want to talk about the actual. I'll talk about it at the end with the release and the box office and everything else because that was important too. It did really well. This was supposed to be a streaming service, a streaming movie. Okay, this was supposed to be a streaming movie, and Amazon, like I said, they put it anywhere between 60 and when this went to theaters, okay, this had the same um this was being released the same day as another big movie. And when I say big, I mean relatively speaking, but it was the second highest movie in 2023. And you know, I finally ended up seeing it, loved it, and there's a lot of reasons why it made as much as it did. And so there's a lot of reasons why it made as much as it did. And I'm talking about Super Mario Bros. This movie was so much fun, right? But there was a lot of reasons why it made over $1 billion, right? First and foremost, it was animated, so kids were gonna flock to it. And it's for adults too, by the way. Everybody loves Mario. Second of all, it was only 90 minutes. So put this in relation. This is only 20 minutes, a little more than 20 minutes more than this film. So, which means you had more showtimes. The other thing too is more showtimes means more money because you can show it more. So this movie made over $100 million in 5 days. Okay, it's actually the I want to say in the 20 or 25th, right in the 20 or 20 in between 20 to 25 highest grossing films of the weekend of all time. Okay, um, and so more showtimes, and it just and the other thing too is there was nothing out at the time that was really competitive, right? Nothing. This was like right in the first week of April. And so what ended up happening was this movie just kept going and going and going and going. And, it made like $100 million less than Barbie, 1.336, I want to say, $1 billion worldwide. So, but Air was opening the same day. And I always thought, I had said it last year, I thought Air was going to do really, really well because it's Michael Jordan, right? You're talking about somebody that completely changed the game. Not only the way he played on the court, not only his story, but he's a worldwide figure, right? He's a world, I mean, and that's the thing. The story itself is incredible. A lot of people, and I'm going to play a clip later on. Matt Damon, the clip, anybody who's seen the film knows what I'm talking about. The ending scene in the last 10 minutes of the movie is just, the speech is just unbelievable. And I'm going to get to that in a couple of minutes. But the whole story, okay, this is 8 years before the Dream Team. This is 2 years before he blows up for 63 in a playoff game. And by the way, that was his first series. They had never made the playoffs, the Bulls. Okay. All these things hadn't happened yet, right? But you had a great cast. Okay. Namely, and I keep going back to her, Viola Davis. Viola Davis, when you talk about, and that's what Affleck really wanted, and Jordan wanted as well, is to have a bigger role for the parents. But look at the difference. Like, this is just a side by side comparison, right? Of Dolores Jordan on the left and Viola Davis playing Dolores Jordan on the right. Okay. And it's remarkable. It's just absolute. I mean, there are some very quotable lines in this, and one of them is, "A shoe is just a shoe until my son steps in it." And this is the final scene where she's talking with Sonny and basically trying to explain to him, "Look, my son wants a piece." Okay, and that's the other thing too. You look at what this did. That one deal totally changed everything, and it made it so. Look, think of all of the basketball players today that have shoes. Whether it's and I'm just naming names off, but whether it was Tracy McGrady, that when I'm talking about players that had actually played before, but whether it's Tracy McGrady or Penny Hardaway or Shaq, I mean, look, you know, that's the thing. Michael Jordan totally, and really Dolores Jordan, totally changed the shoe industry. Totally changed it. At a time where nobody wanted to come to Nike. And then you had basketball players as they came out. Every single deal. was template. The template was this deal. Now, obviously, it wasn't as much. It's more money now today, relatively speaking, but that was the big thing. Um, but it's just amazing. So there is another scene, and this is the brilliance of Viola Davis. Okay, Sonny takes it upon himself to go down to North Carolina against the advice of everybody, because unbeknownst to Phil Knight, his boss, okay, he takes it upon himself to go down to North Carolina because he sees what nobody else sees. This guy is great. This guy is going to be a great player. And this scene here talks, Viola says to Sonny, she turns it around. It's like, how did you get your name? And Damon says, he tells the story, and then Sonny says, look, I'm going to tell you how the other two meetings are going to go. And he basically says, look, this is how this meeting's going to go, and this is how this meeting's going to go. But here are the questions I want you to ask. Who's running the Adidas at this point? And who's, the other question covers? And because at that time, don't forget, guys, Converse had Dr. J, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird. And so Dolores says, look, my son is going to be no more than number 4. And even the boss says, look, that you're talking about Magic Johnson, right? You're talking about Larry Bird. Um, so she says, look, fine. If this is how it goes, you've got a meeting. If it doesn't, we're going to sign with one of the other two. It's like, okay. And he knew exactly how it was going to go. Subsequently, they get the meeting with the parents, and every single act. So if you're going to call everything like 25 or 30 minutes or 35 minutes, Act One is um, Converse, or two. So Act One really is the establishing of Nike and everything else. Okay. Act Two is all about the meetings, and then really Act Three is, did they land Jordan? And Affleck, or not, well, Affleck directed Damon brilliantly. They've been working together for years, but there's always one scene in every film. Pick any of your favorite scenes. Pick any of your favorite movies. Doesn't matter what it is. There's always one scene in a film that's memorable. One scene or one line, right? And I remember going to see this in theaters because I was excited to see it. And I couldn't believe at that point. No, you got to remember, it was March and April. And I went, I would love to see him get nominated for an Oscar. Never happened. Okay. We have our 5 locked up, and we'll talk about, by the way, guys, we'll talk about that. Oscar nominations next week. So next week, next Wednesday, what we'll do is we'll have um, Matthew Anderson back on the program, and we are going to go through all of the Oscar nominations. But getting back to Air real quick, there's always one scene in every film that you look at and go, oh, yeah, that's it. And I'm going to play, and anybody who's seen this knows, but I'm going to, for anybody that hasn't seen this, and by the way, this was Conray's, one of his best writing jobs. Amazing. And this is a speech that um, he gives Jordan at the meeting, and after he shows him the shoe. And here's the clip.
Money can buy you almost anything. It can't buy you immortality. That you have to earn. I'm gonna look you in the eyes, and I'm gonna tell you the future. You were cut from your high school basketball team. You willed your way to the NBA. You're gonna win championships. It's an American story, and that's why Americans are gonna love it. People are gonna build you up. God, are they going to? Because when you're great and new, we love you. Man, we'll build you into something that doesn't even exist. You're gonna change the fucking world. But you know what? Once they've built you as high as they possibly can, they're gonna tear you back down. It's the most predictable pattern. We build you into something that doesn't exist, and that means you have to try to be that thing. All day, every day. That's how it works. And we do it again and again and again. And I'm gonna tell you the truth. You're gonna be attacked, betrayed, exposed, and humiliated. And you'll survive that. A lot of people can climb that mountain. It's the way down that breaks them. Because that's the moment when you are truly alone. And what will you do then? Can you summon the will to fight on through all the pain and rise again? Who are you, Michael? That will be the defining question of your life. And I think you already know the answer. And that's why we're all here. A shoe is just a shoe. Until somebody steps into it. Then it has meaning. The rest of us just want a chance to touch that greatness. And we need you in these shoes, not so you have meaning in your life, but so that we have meaning in ours. Everyone at this table will be forgotten as soon as our time here is up. Except for you. You're gonna be remembered forever, because some things are eternal. You're Michael Jordan, and your story is gonna make us want to fly.
That's genius. Absolutely genius. And everything about that, how they, excuse me, how they basically showed different aspects of his life and made it. And he's right. He's right. Jordan will never be forgotten. Jordan will never, ever be forgotten. The great ones are never forgotten about. Excuse me. The great ones are never forgotten about. And it's so true about life, too. People build you up, and then you come crashing down. It's not the fault. It's not, because you can take that speech and equate it to real life. Because I'm sure everybody that is going to watch this video at some point in their life has been betrayed, has been, had adversity happen. It's a part of life. And I always say this: adversity defines what kind of character you have, right? Because if you have no adversity, you think everything's hunky dory. The minute you encounter adversity, no matter what it is, whether it's a loss in a relationship, whether it's losing your job, whether it's, going broke, we've all been there in some capacity. It's how you get back up. And that's why one of the greatest lines in Batman Begins, and I use that meme all the time. Why do we fall? To pick ourselves back up. And that's the truth. Can you pick yourself back up? And that whole little speech, I thought at that point could absolutely get him nominated for an Oscar. It won't happen. We have our 5. We'll talk about those next week with Matthew. But I wanted to go back to the response. Okay, the release of this was the budget on this was um, about 60 million. Okay, 60 to 80 million. Amazon spent about 40 to 50 million promoting the film. Okay. Um, and by the way, it was fantastic. It was a great move that they did. Um, it was a great move that they did promote it, or put it in theaters because they got all their money back plus some. Um, so it was released on streaming May 12th of last year, but actually it was released in let's see. The film closed out South by Southwest, which is a film festival, on March 18th. So that really, out of that and the test screenings, is why they did that. It was released 6 months later in September and was fantastic. So in the theater, it grossed $52.5 million here in the United States and 37.6 overseas. So it made $90 million. So it made its money back. In the United States, it was once again released alongside Super Mario. Okay, and Mario was just a juggernaut for all the reasons we talked about, and that was projected to make 16 to 18 million dollars in 3,500 theaters in its 5-day opening. Okay, it made 3.2 its first day and 2.4 its second. The film went on to debut for 14.4 million and 20 million over 2 days, finishing third. So, once again, the critical response, though, this is what I find interesting. The critical response to this movie, okay, was 93% of the 332 critics, it gave it positive. Has an average of 7.7 out of 10. So the website Rotten Tomatoes basically says this: it's a fact-based drama that no one will dunk on. Air aims to dramatize events that have changed the sports world forever and almost hits nothing but net. Okay. Richard Roper gave the 4 out of 4 stars, saying, "Thanks to Affleck's short-handed period piece perfection direction, a cracking good screenplay by Alex Convey, and the lively, funny, warm, and passionate performances from an A-list cast, are as entertaining and fast-paced as an NBA Finals game that is destined for overtime." Um, we had a writer for Variety gave it a positive review, praising the performances, saying, "Air ought to be taken as the ultimate example of the American dream, a funny, touching Cinderella story about how the third place sneaker brand wished upon a star and how that man and his mother were smart enough to know their value." The THR gave it a positive review, saying, "For most audiences, Air will be worth seeing just for the starry cast, particularly the reunion of Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. These scenes possess a kinetic and intimate dynamicism for the rest of the film, but doesn't always match." But there were people that basically, just like everything else, did not give it a positive review. And some basically dismissed it as a flimsy premise, a craven exercise in a capitalism, uh, you know, and basically saying how there was it was like a commercial. So Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian admonished the film, saying, quote, looking like the most expensive in-house corporate promo in history, shallow and obtuse, and also bemoaned the underutilization of Davis, who he describes as, quote, having more charisma and force than the rest of the cast put together. Um, and I agree. I mean, Viola Davis is a powerhouse. I've said it before. She is an absolute powerhouse. Not only in this movie, but just in general. That scene, she improvised. Okay, when she's, by the way, that final scene, anybody who's seen the film, that final scene, the third act, when they're talking on the phone, they were actually they were they were actually in two separate locations. Okay, so It wasn't like he was in the next room. Um, Nonetheless, the whole scene when he's, and she uses that same line. A shoe isn't just a shoe until my son steps in it. Um, and her soliloquy was very good. But when she takes the phone away and she's listening to Sonny, that was all improvised. That's the quality of actors um, Affleck was able to get for this. It just the film is just fantastic. Unfortunately, it is not. It was never going to make hundreds of millions of dollars and everything else. Okay, I thought once again the authenticity that Affleck used was, from the hair and everything else was fantastic. You know, him looking like Phil Knight. I mean, just it was this film was if I'm going to compare it to any sports film, okay, I would compare it honestly to it's a combination, okay, of Steve Jobs and Draft Day, right? Steve Jobs because once again, Ben Affleck really makes you feel like you're in 1984. Whether it's the commercials, whether it's the computers, whether it's the surrounding areas, everything else. Excuse me, the surrounding areas, anything else. That really puts you in 1984 to Draft Day. Draft Day is a sports movie. It's about a little player, okay, that a lot of people, he was a good player and everything else. And subsequently, you know, blew up, was the superstar. And so, there was a deal made and everything else. So that those are the two films, a combination. Air is a combination of those two films, in my opinion. And I love both films, by the way. So that just goes to show you how good it was. Now, and once again, the cast, right? I mean, the cast is beyond Matt Damon or beyond Kevin Costner and beyond Jennifer Garner. Those were the only two people you had. This one you had three, really. I mean, it was a little more of a Affleck and Damon, Viola, and then Chris Tucker and Jason Batemore's, side characters. So, yeah. But I love this movie. I love this movie, and it's it's a fantastic it's a fantastic movie. And yeah, guys, go see it. If you haven't seen it already, spend if you have Amazon Prime, you're all set. You'll be able to watch it with no problem. Um, it's if you don't have it, spend the $7-8. I'm recommending it. It's a fantastic film. Um, and I can't wait to see what they do next. I hope they're able to collaborate more. We'll see. It's actually a big week coming up. It's actually a very big week coming up. So I want to. So one of the things. So we have one more um, stream coming up, and that's tomorrow. And so I'm getting this photo ready for you guys. So anybody who has seen the YouTube post I put on the other day knows what it is. But for all those who are just stopping by for the first time and whatever else, so this is the second stream, and it's excuse me, guys. This is the second stream in as many days. We got one more stream coming up, and that's tomorrow. And as I've said, I'm touching on the next 2 weeks. Okay, I'm touching on films right before we move into February and Black History Month and everything else. So, Equalizer 3. Love this movie. Absolutely love this movie. It was fantastic. Um, Number one, because Denzel Washington. This is the only franchise in Denzel's career that he's actually done, believe it or not. Um, that all being said, he is reuniting again with one of his good friends and best directors in the game, Antoine Fuqua. And anybody who knows, his work, of course, knows, he's a hell of a director. Training Day. That's probably what he's best known for. And The Equalizer. But some of his films that are, I won't say lesser known films, he did Tears of the Sun back in um, way back when with Bruce Willis. He's done, excuse me, he's done Brooklyn's Finest, which I saw in theaters. It was very good. It's been years since I've seen that. Southpaw with Jake Gyllenhaal. Okay. Rachel McAdams, Forrest Whitaker. Um, that was during a time too where there were a lot of boxing movies out. You had Hands of Stone, you had Southpaw, you had Creed, a lot of different boxing movies. But that was a really good movie too. It was a really good movie. Um, but the reason why this was so good, not one of the reasons why is because of Fuqua, okay? But and everybody was so excited when this news came out, and he was reuniting with Dakota um, Dakota Fanning. Everybody was like, "Yes, she's back," right? Because the the only time that they've worked together was 20 years ago on Man on Fire. Now she had been in the Twilight movies, right? But this was her time to come back, and everybody was like, "Well, what is she gonna play, and how is they gonna do it?" And it was so much fun. And she was really good in it. She was really, really good in her role. And the scene, this scene here, was just the epitome, right? And she even said she had a blast filming this, and she always, Denzel at that time always kept her on her toes and everything else, improvising and everything else. I love this movie. I loved it because the thing is that if you have watched the first two Equalizer films, okay, you know that it's, I won't say a different film. The violence, the main thing about this film is this, okay, the violence, okay. In the first two films, you had, he was looking, you always see, which was a really cool thing, by the way. Like in the first one, when he's in the room with the four guys, we go inside of his eye and he plays out how it's going to happen. This one, you didn't get that for the first two acts at all. And even in the first 10 minutes, it was right out of the gate. And that's it. When we see the inciting incident and what happens for the first two acts, and I'm thinking to myself in the theater of this, I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be a bloodbath the third act. And it was. But it was so cool to see, Denzel just playing McCall, but having to take all this in. All this rage and everything else building up. And he watches all these people, the mafia, just do what they want for the first two acts. And then when he's able to, he unleashes. And it was like, whoa. But not only that, like I said, with the speakers, look, the story is the same, right? The story was always going to be the same. all of that being said, um, fanning there just made it so much worthwhile. And the tie-in at the end, I'm not going to give it anything away. Okay, no spoilers here. But anybody who's seen this knows what I'm talking about. The tie-in was absolutely spot on by Antoine. Um, and I believe, wholeheartedly believe this. If they wanted, they could continue the whole franchise with her. It was just done so well. Um, anyways, that is going to be the movie for tomorrow. The Equalizer, number 3. It's a really fun movie. Did it make my top 10 list? Yes, it did. But it was down there, 7 or 8. But I had a lot of fun with this. I had a lot of fun with this. And if you really want to have a lot of fun, sit down and watch all 3. And you get to see the arc of Robert McCall. It's a great thing. So that is coming up tomorrow. Okay, coming up this week. So on Friday we have the re-release, the remastered release on PS5 of one of the arguably the greatest video games of all time, and that's The Last of Us Part Two. Um, won over 300 awards. Just, I mean, IGN, Game Informer, won Game of the Year. I mean, the number of accolades is too long to list. Okay, it's being re-released with a lot of new cool stuff. Um, what I did was when I had one of my Twitter followers. His name is Benjamin, and I hope you were watching, Benjamin. So give you a shout out there. But I'm gonna be. We did a 4-part. It was actually an hour-long type of interview, but we're gonna be releasing every one of the 4 parts for the next 4 days. Now they're not that good. Okay, my editing skills were not the best, and Riverside, the streaming service I used, didn't really cooperate in some of them, but I'm going to re-release them anyways. And what we do is we go in depth and talk about all of the different things. We talk about the themes, we talk about, the violence, we talk about the parallels, we talk about everything. And I want to give that to you. Also, there was another video excuse me, I'll re-release. It was The Last of Us 3 years later. And this is so, at that time, the anniversary of The Last of Us in part 2, and we'll talk about that. And that way you guys are getting content, but also it's what's hot right now. So so it's going to start on Friday the 19th. You guys are going to get part 1 on Friday, part 2 on Saturday, part 3 on Sunday, part 4 on Monday. That's going to lead up to Tuesday and next Tuesday in the streams. Okay. Um, so the 3 films I'm going to be talking about next week, okay, are Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Creed 3, and I got it right here for you guys, Saw X. So those are the 3 films that I'm going to be talking about. And then we're going to go into February and do Black History Month. Also, guys, you're going to be getting 2 more retrospectives, okay, on Monday and Friday, respectively. Indiana, this is going to be Harrison Ford week. I know he just won his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Critics' Choice Awards, which is fantastic. Clear and Present Danger from 1994. Hard to believe it's been 30 years for that. And then Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, 40 years ago. So we're going to be, so those are the 2 films for that. And then we're going to go into February. Excuse me, Black History Month. The perfect movie for February is going to be Get Out. And we're going to do this thing all over again. So what I would ask people, and what I would, because, I just put this clip in there, and I'm going to be honest, some of these I'm not going to get monetized for. Um, what I would ask is that um, thing is that um, because I'm not going to get monetized for this, okay, and I want to bring this to you, it brings credence to it and everything else. The memberships right now, if you go to anybody who goes to the page, by the way, guys, at least if nothing else, hit that like and subscribe button, because what that does is that tells me that you're enjoying the content and tells me you are watching the content. And if you want to help out, okay, right now it's free. Okay, go to uh, the membership page on the channel. Okay, there's three. So the first month is going to be free, and then I have three levels there. They're all very very cheap. $2.99, $5.99, and $9.99. You can't. So $9.99, you can't get all this content that I'm giving you anywhere else for $10 a month. Not even Netflix. And what that does is it's going to help me out tremendously, because what's going to end up happening is, I'll be able to do this and give you guys better content. The other thing too is I have a goal, okay, and I'd like to have you guys get the stuff out there for me. Is um, I have a goal of getting to 2,000 subscribers this year. Um, if I can get to 2,000 subscribers, my goal is to try and get to 2,000 subscribers and 15 to 20 paid memberships by the end of the year. And I want to make it as, reasonable as possible, these goals. But you guys can help me with that. So, and you guys will never miss a video, and you guys will be helping me out, and it's a win-win for everybody. So, yeah, that's going to do it. Um, so come back here tomorrow. It's going to be right around 2 o'clock, in between 2 and 2:30. I'll tweet it out tomorrow. Um, and then next week, stay tuned for Matthew Anderson and myself. We are going to be doing a week from today. Oscar nominations come out. I'm not going to be doing the stream immediately, but once I get everything together, we will be talking about all the Oscar nominations and where Matthew sees some of these going. I have an idea of how many. Hey there, Meadow. How are you? It's been a while. Yes, it has. I hope everything's fantastic. I hope everything's well with you and everything else. Um, so I just did a fantastic stream, and I'll be uploading it in a minute on air. So I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't, so I'm going back over the next 2 or 3 days. Yesterday I did Oppenheimer. Excuse me. Yesterday I did Oppenheimer. Um, Today I did Air. Okay. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing Equalizer 3. So those are the movies for this week. Next week, okay, um, going to be doing Saw X, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and Creed 3. And that's going to all lead up to um, Black History Month and whatever. But the other thing is that starting on Friday, the 19th, um, yes, it is an amazing movie. It is an amazing movie. So starting on Friday, I'm sure you know that The Last of Us Part 2 is um, being re-released on PS5. So about a year ago, I ended up doing about an hour talk interview with one of my Twitter followers, and his name is Benjamin, and cut it up into 4 segments. So Friday you're going to get part 1, Saturday you'll get part 2, Sunday you'll get part 3, and Monday you'll get part 4. Also, I did a 3 years later about The Last of Us Part Two. Uh, excuse me, and um, yeah. So this week, okay, you guys are going to be getting two more retrospectives. On Monday, you guys are going to be getting Clear and Present Danger, and then on Friday, you guys are going to be getting um, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So it's a lot of stuff there. So yeah, sit down, enjoy it, and then as I said, next week we're going to be doing an Oscar. As you just came in, Metal, I'm going to be doing an Oscar preview show. So when nominations come out, not immediately, but during the day, I'm going to have Matthew Anderson on. Okay, or if he doesn't have the time to come on, I will come on, and I have an idea of exactly how many Oscars each film is going to win and who's going to win the big one. And yeah, we got all these things moving forward. So a lot of stuff for you guys. I have not seen Percy Jackson. No, I have not seen it. I've heard good things about it though. Just been too busy. Been too busy with everything for the channel and everything else. So I've heard very good things about it though. Um, so, and I was actually thinking about, you know, there is. I would like to eventually go back and do a show of something that you know one episode on every single episode of the show. I don't know what it is. The one show I have was thinking about that I haven't seen is Breaking Bad. So we'll see. That's down the road. Depends on how far I can get ahead. So, but yeah. So that's what is lined up for you guys. I'm excited. We got a huge. Not to mention, guys, I'm going to be covering all the big movies of 2024. I can't wait for March 1st. So I will sit down at some point and I'm going to watch Dune, and I'll come back on here and we'll talk all about Dune right before um, the release of Dune 2, March 1st. So that will be a big one. And then, all the summer ones, the Fall Guy and everything else. So, okay, guys. Yeah, that's going to do it for me today. Um, Come back here tomorrow, probably around, I don't know, 2:30, in between 2 to 2:30. I'll tweet it out. And if you don't make the live stream, don't worry, guys. I'm going to upload this and you guys can watch the whole video. So I appreciate everybody stopping by. Even if you stop by for a couple of minutes, guys, I'm going to ask, and you're are a member, Metal. So, and I thank you again for that. Even if you just stop by for a couple of minutes, guys, hit that like and subscribe button. You know, because that gets this stuff out. Leave a comment, okay? Tell me what your favorite Denzel Washington movie is, and that way, I see you, and I respond to everybody. So, okay, guys, everybody have do the three things you got to do: be safe, be careful, and have a great rest of the afternoon. Um, I am David Steele, and you've been watching Real Talks, and bye bye, guys.